The suitcase handle cut into my palm as I stood on the porch, watching my own son's face twist with disgust. 73 years of life, and I'd never seen hatred that pure directed at me. "Mom, we've talked about this." David's voice carried that patronizing tone he'd perfected since his promotion at the bank. "Sarah and I can't keep subsidizing your lifestyle. We have our own family to think about." The autumn wind carried the scent of burning leaves from somewhere down Maple Street, mixing with the sharp smell of fresh paint from their newly renovated front door. Everything about this house screamed money, the kind of money that made my monthly pension check look like pocket change. "I'm not asking you to subsidize anything," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I just need a place to stay until I can figure things out. The apartment complex sold, and that's not our problem." Sarah appeared behind David, her manicured fingers resting on his shoulder like she was marking territory. "We've already done more than enough. The down payment for your last place, the car repairs, the medical bills. We can't keep throwing good money after bad." Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you're hooked already, a like and subscribe will keep these stories coming. The words hit me like physical blows. Throwing good money after bad. As if I were some failed investment instead of the woman who'd raised David, who'd worked double shifts at the diner to pay for his college, who'd held his hand through every scraped knee and broken heart. "David." I tried one more time, reaching toward him. "I'm your mother." He stepped back, and that small movement shattered something inside me that I didn't know could break any further. "You're a burden," he said, each word deliberate and cruel. "We don't need your pathetic pension cash anymore. We don't need you." The suitcase slipped from my numb fingers, hitting the porch with a dull thud. Inside, I could hear the ceramic figurine of a dancing couple, a wedding gift from David's father, crack against something hard. 47 years of marriage, reduced to broken pieces in a second-hand suitcase. Sarah's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it with the kind of excitement that made her whole face light up. "Oh my God, David. The lottery office called back. They confirmed it. We actually won. $57 million. David's expression shifted from cruel satisfaction to pure joy as he grabbed the phone from her hands. "Are you serious? We're actually millionaires." They embraced right there in the doorway, spinning each other around like teenagers, their laughter echoing off the porch ceiling. Neither of them looked at me. Neither of them seemed to remember I was still standing there, watching my son celebrate his good fortune while his mother stood homeless on his doorstep. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so devastating. They were celebrating a lottery win, completely unaware that the ticket they'd bought, the ticket that had just made them millionaires, had been purchased with money I'd given Sarah for groceries last month. Money from my pathetic pension. Money that came with a story they'd never bothered to ask about. I bent down slowly, my arthritic knees protesting, and picked up my suitcase. The handle was slick with sweat and rain that had started to fall while we'd been talking. The drops were cold against my face, mixing with tears I hadn't realized I was crying. "Congratulations," I whispered, but they were too busy planning their new life to hear me. I turned and walked down the driveway, each step taking me further from the son I'd raised and closer to a future I couldn't imagine. Behind me, their celebration continued, growing louder and more jubilant with each passing second. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that the lottery ticket wasn't the only secret I'd been keeping. In my purse, folded carefully between my insurance cards and a photo of David's father, was a letter that would change everything. A letter I'd received 3 days ago but hadn't had the courage to open until this morning. The return address read, Pemberton, Walsh & Associates, Estate Attorneys. The letter inside had been brief and to the point. My estranged sister Margaret had died, leaving me as the sole beneficiary of her estate. An estate worth $12 million. I'd planned to tell David about the inheritance tonight, over dinner, thinking it might help ease the financial pressure he claimed to be under. I'd imagined his relief, maybe even his gratitude. I'd pictured us laughing about how everything had worked out, how we'd both be financially secure now. Instead, I was walking away from his house in the rain, carrying everything I owned in a single suitcase, while he celebrated lottery winnings that should have been mine. The rain was coming down harder now, soaking through my thin coat and making the sidewalk treacherous. I could hear a car approaching from behind, its engine growing louder as it got closer. For a moment, I thought it might be David, coming after me, ready to apologize and bring me home. But when I turned around, The car that pulled up beside me wasn't David's BMW. It was a black sedan with tinted windows, and the man who stepped out was wearing an expensive suit that somehow managed to look perfectly pressed despite the rain. "Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell?" he asked, his voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. I nodded, too surprised to speak. "My name is Vincent Pemberton. I've been trying to reach you about your sister's estate." He glanced toward David's house, where the celebration was still audible. "I think we need to talk." Vincent Pemberton's car smelled like leather and expensive cologne, a stark contrast to the musty interior of the taxi I'd been planning to call. The rain drummed against the windows as we pulled away from David's house, and I watched the warm glow of their celebration fade into the distance. "I apologize for the dramatic timing," Vincent said, adjusting the rearview mirror to meet my eyes. "I've been trying to reach you for days. Your old apartment manager gave me this address." My hands trembled as I fumbled with the seatbelt. "I just received your letter this morning. I was going to call tomorrow, my voice cracked. Today has been complicated." "I imagine it has." His tone was gentle, professional. "Mrs. Hartwell, I need you to understand something about your sister's estate. The $12 million I mentioned in the letter, that's just the liquid assets. The total inheritance is considerably larger." The words seemed to float in the air between us, not quite landing. I stared out at the familiar streets of my neighborhood, watching houses where I'd lived my entire adult life blur past in the rain. "I'm sorry, what do you mean by considerably larger?" Vincent pulled into the parking lot of a small coffee shop, its neon sign flickering against the gray afternoon. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more comfortable and dry." Inside the coffee shop, the warmth hit me like a physical embrace. Vincent guided me to a corner booth, away from the handful of other customers seeking refuge from the storm. He ordered 2 coffees without asking what I wanted, somehow knowing I needed the comfort more than the choice. "Your sister Margaret was a remarkable woman," he began, sliding a thick manila folder across the table. "She never married, never had children, and she spent the last 30 years of her life building a business empire that most people never knew existed." I opened the folder with shaking fingers. The first document was a property deed for a mansion in Connecticut. The second was a stock portfolio summary that made my eyes water. The third was a list of business holdings that went on for 3 pages. "The total estate value is approximately $47 million, Vincent said quietly. "Your sister left very specific instructions about how she wanted it handled." The coffee cup slipped from my numb fingers, sending hot liquid across the table. Vincent calmly handed me napkins, his expression patient and understanding. "47 million, I repeated, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "But we hadn't spoken in 20 years. Why would she?" "She left you a letter." Vincent reached into his briefcase and withdrew a cream-colored envelope with my name written in Margaret's familiar handwriting. "She asked me to give this to you personally." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Margaret's voice seemed to speak from the pages, her words as sharp and direct as I remembered. "Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and Vincent has found you. Good. I hope you're sitting down. I know we haven't talked since Mother's funeral. I know you think I'm a bitter old woman who chose money over family. You're probably right about the bitter part, but wrong about the rest. I chose independence over dependence. I chose building something over accepting scraps. I chose to never again stand in someone's doorway, begging for a place to belong. I've been watching you, Ellie. Not stalking, don't flatter yourself, but keeping tabs. I know about David's promotion. I know about Sarah's spending habits. I know about the way they treat you like a burden instead of the woman who sacrificed everything for that ungrateful boy. The money is yours now. All of it. But there are conditions. First, don't tell David about the inheritance until you've had time to think. Really think. About what you want your life to look like now. Second, the lottery ticket they're celebrating tonight? The one they bought with your grocery money? That ticket is legally yours. Vincent has the documentation to prove it. Third, there's something else they don't know. Something that will make their little celebration look like pocket change. I've been buying lottery tickets in your name for 15 years, Ellie. Every week, same numbers, our birthdays, Mother's birthday, the date Daddy died. Last month, one of those tickets hit. Not the 57 million they think they won. The real jackpot. The one worth $234 million. The ticket is in a safety deposit box at First National Bank. Vincent has the key. Use the money wisely, sister. And remember, family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them most. Love, yes, love, despite everything. Margaret. The letter fluttered from my hands to the table. Vincent sat quietly, letting me process what I'd just read. Around us, the coffee shop hummed with normal life, students typing on laptops, a mother feeding her toddler, an elderly man reading a newspaper. None of them knew that the world had just shifted on its axis. $234 million, I whispered. Plus the $47 million from the estate, Vincent confirmed. Your sister was very thorough in her planning. She anticipated that your family might not appreciate your newfound independence. I thought about David and Sarah, still celebrating in their living room, planning how to spend money that was never theirs to begin with. I thought about the way David had looked at me on the porch, like I was something distasteful he needed to scrape off his shoe. What happens now? I asked. Vincent smiled, and for the first time since I'd met him, it reached his eyes. Now, Mrs. Hartwell, you get to decide what kind of life you want to live. But first, we need to retrieve that lottery ticket. And then... He paused, glancing toward the window where David's neighborhood was visible in the distance. Then we need to have a conversation with your son about theft. My phone buzzed against the table. A text message from David. Mom, we've been thinking. Maybe we were too harsh. Come back and we can talk. I stared at the message, understanding flooding through me like ice water. They'd done the math. $57 million, and they were already worried about how it would look if people found out they'd kicked their mother out on the same day they became millionaires. Vincent read the message over my shoulder. Interesting timing. They want to control the narrative, I said, surprised by how clear my thinking had become. Make sure no one knows they threw me out. And what do you want to do about that? I looked at my reflection in the coffee shop window, a 73-year-old woman with gray hair and tired eyes, wearing a coat that had seen better decades. But underneath that reflection, I could see something else. Something that looked like Margaret's stubborn chin and our father's determined eyes. I want to go get my lottery ticket, I said. And then I want to go home. Home. I smiled, feeling something shift inside my chest. Something that felt like freedom. I need to buy a house first. Something with a very good security system and a long driveway. I have a feeling I'm going to have visitors soon. Vincent's phone rang, interrupting the moment. He glanced at the caller ID and frowned. It's my office. I need to take this. He stepped away from the table, his voice low and urgent. I couldn't make out the words, but his body language shifted from professional calm to something that looked like concern. When he returned, his expression was grim. Mrs. Hartwell, we have a problem. Someone has been asking questions about your sister's estate. Someone who knew to ask very specific questions about lottery tickets and inheritance laws. What kind of someone? The kind who works for David's bank. The kind who might have access to financial records they shouldn't be looking at. My blood turned to ice. How much do they know? I'm not sure yet, but we need to move quickly. If David finds out about the real lottery ticket before we can secure it. Vincent didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky remained dark and threatening. In the distance, I could see lights coming on in houses across the neighborhood, families gathering for dinner, children doing homework, normal people living normal lives. But my normal life was over. And as Vincent helped me back into his car, I realized I had no idea what was going to replace it. The only thing I knew for certain was that David's celebration was about to become very, very complicated. The First National Bank felt like a fortress at 6:30 in the evening, its marble floors echoing our footsteps as Vincent led me through corridors I'd never seen before. The manager, a thin man named Peterson, had agreed to meet us after hours, a favor that Vincent's law firm apparently commanded without question. Box 847, Peterson said, inserting his key into the safety deposit box lock. Your sister was very specific about the access protocols. Only you, Mrs. Hartwell, and only with Mr. Pemberton present as witness. The metal box slid out with a soft whisper. Inside, nestled between legal documents and jewelry I didn't recognize, was a single lottery ticket in a clear plastic sleeve. Beneath it, another letter in Margaret's handwriting. Ellie, if you're reading this in the bank, it means Vincent told you about the real ticket. The numbers are our family, 1-7-12-23-31-45. I've been playing them every week since Daddy died, always in your name. Always hoping. The ticket in David's house is a decoy. I bought it the same day as this one, same store, different numbers. I wanted to see what would happen if they thought they'd won something significant. I wanted to see how they'd treat you when they thought they didn't need you anymore. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I'm not sorry I did it. You needed to see who they really are. The real ticket expires in 6 days. Claim it when you're ready to change everything. P.S. Check the jewelry box. Mama's engagement ring is in there. The one David sold when he thought you wouldn't notice. I bought it back. My hands trembled as I lifted the small velvet box. Inside was my mother's ring, the one I'd worn on my right hand for 20 years after she died, until David convinced me to let him invest it for me. The diamond caught the bank's fluorescent light, throwing tiny rainbows across the metal walls. Mrs. Hartwell? Peterson's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you all right? I wasn't all right. I was furious. The kind of fury that burns clean and bright, leaving no room for doubt or hesitation. Vincent, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. I want to claim the ticket. Tonight. The lottery office is closed, but I can arrange for an emergency claim first thing tomorrow morning. Given the amount involved, they'll accommodate us. Good. I slipped my mother's ring onto my finger where it belonged. And I want to buy a house. Tonight. Vincent raised an eyebrow. Real estate transactions typically take. I don't care about typical. I have $47 million in inheritance, and I'm about to have $234 million more. Someone in this city will sell me a house tonight. Peterson cleared his throat. Actually, Mrs. Hartwell, there might be something. My wife is a real estate agent, and she mentioned a property that just came on the market. The owner is motivated to sell quickly, divorce situation. It's in Riverside Heights, about 10 minutes from your son's neighborhood. Riverside Heights. Where the old money lived, where David had always dreamed of buying but could never afford. Even with his bank salary and Sarah's trust fund, those houses were beyond their reach. Show me, I said. An hour later, I stood in the foyer of a house that belonged in a magazine. 12,000 square feet of marble and mahogany, with a circular driveway, a 3-car garage, and windows that looked out over the river. The owner, a woman named Patricia Whitmore, paced the living room like a caged animal. I need to be in California by Friday, she said, her voice tight with stress. My lawyer says the divorce will be finalized faster if I'm not in the same state as my ex-husband. I'll take any reasonable offer. What's reasonable? I asked. The house appraised at $4.2 million. I'll take $3.8 cash, if you can close by Thursday. Vincent started to speak, probably to negotiate, but I held up my hand. I'll take it. $4 million cash, if you can be out by tomorrow night. Patricia's eyes widened. You're serious? Dead serious. While Vincent and Patricia worked out the details, I walked through the house, imagining my life in these rooms. The kitchen was bigger than my entire apartment had been. The master bedroom had a fireplace and a balcony overlooking the river. The library had floor-to-ceiling windows and enough shelf space for all the books I'd always wanted to read but never had time for. My phone buzzed. Another text from David. Mom, please come home. We're worried about you. We can work something out. I almost laughed. Worried about me. Now that they thought they were millionaires, they could afford to be generous. They could afford to let their poor mother live in their guest room, maybe even give her a small allowance from their winnings. If only they knew. Vincent found me in the library, staring out at the city lights reflected in the river. The paperwork is ready. Patricia's lawyer is meeting us here in an hour to finalize everything. Are you sure about this, Mrs. Hartwell? It's a lot of money, and you're making decisions very quickly. I've been making slow decisions my whole life, Vincent. Look where it got me. I turned away from the window. I want to do something else before we sign the papers. I want to visit David. Mrs. Hartwell, I'm not sure that's wise. If he's been investigating the estate. He has no idea about the estate. He's investigating a $57 million lottery ticket that doesn't belong to him. I smiled, feeling something sharp and satisfied settle in my chest. I think it's time he learned the truth. The drive to David's house felt different this time. Instead of approaching as a supplicant, I was coming as an equal. More than an equal. I was coming as someone who could buy and sell his entire neighborhood without blinking. Vincent parked across the street, and we sat in the darkness, watching the warm light spill from David's windows. Through the living room window, I could see him and Sarah on the couch, surrounded by papers and laptops. Planning their new life, no doubt. What exactly are you planning to do? Vincent asked. I'm going to give them what they want, I said. I'm going to disappear from their lives completely. I walked up the driveway alone, my footsteps echoing in the quiet evening air. The porch light came on automatically, and I could hear voices inside, excited, happy voices discussing vacation destinations and new cars. I rang the doorbell. David opened the door, his face cycling through surprise, relief, and something that might have been guilt. Mom. Thank God. We've been so worried. Come in, come in. The living room was exactly as I'd left it hours earlier, except now it was covered with printouts and brochures. Sarah looked up from a laptop, her smile bright and artificial. Eleanor. We're so glad you came back. We've been talking, and we realize we may have been a little harsh earlier. We want to make it right. That's very kind of you, I said, settling into the chair across from them. I can see you've been busy. David had the grace to look embarrassed. We were just exploring some options. The lottery win changes things, obviously. We'll be able to help you more now. Help me how? Well, we could set up a small trust fund. Maybe $1,000 a month? That would supplement your pension nicely. Sarah's voice was warm, generous. And of course, you could visit whenever you want. Visit. In the house I'd helped them buy, with money from the lottery ticket I'd paid for. That's very generous, I said. But I have some news that might change your plans. David leaned forward, his expression shifting to concern. What kind of news? Are you sick? Is that why you've been acting so strange? I'm not sick, David. I'm rich. The silence that followed was profound. Sarah's fingers froze over her laptop keyboard. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I'm sorry, what? Sarah finally managed. My sister Margaret died. She left me her estate. $47 million. I let that sink in for a moment. But that's not the interesting part. David found his voice. 47 million? Mom, that's incredible. We had no idea Margaret had that kind of money. This changes everything. Does it? How? Well, obviously you don't need our help anymore. You can afford your own place, your own care. You're completely independent now. The relief in his voice was unmistakable. You're right. I don't need your help. But there's something else you should know. I reached into my purse and pulled out a copy of the lottery ticket receipt, the one Vincent had prepared, showing my name as the purchaser. The lottery ticket you think you won? The one you bought with my grocery money? That ticket legally belongs to me. The color drained from David's face. What are you talking about? I gave Sarah $60 for groceries last month. She used 20 of it to buy lottery tickets. Tickets purchased with my money, in a store where I'm a regular customer, using my preferred numbers. Vincent assures me that any court would rule in my favor. Sarah's laptop slid off her knees, hitting the floor with a crack. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. But here's the thing, I don't want your $57 million. I have something better. I pulled out the real lottery ticket, still in its plastic sleeve. This is the ticket I bought the same day, same store, different numbers. This ticket is worth $234 million. The silence stretched so long I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. David stared at the ticket like it might bite him. Sarah made a small, strangled sound. $234 million, David whispered. That's right. So you can keep your $57 million. Consider it a gift from the mother you threw away. I stood up, smoothing my coat. I just wanted you to know that when you tell people about your lottery win, when you buy your new cars and take your vacations, you'll always know that your pathetic mother is worth 4 times what you are.
Mom, wait. David jumped up, reaching for me. We can work this out. We can share. Share.
I laughed, and the sound surprised me with its bitterness. Like you wanted to share your home with me this afternoon? Like you shared the truth about selling my mother's ring?
David's face went white. How did you?
I know a lot of things, David. I know you've been investigating Margaret's estate through your bank connections. I know you sold my ring and told me it was stolen. I know you've been planning to put me in a nursing home as soon as you could afford it.
I moved toward the door.
But mostly, I know that I raised a son who sees his mother as a burden to be managed rather than a person to be loved.
That's not true, Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction.
Isn't it? This afternoon, when you thought I was poor and desperate, you kicked me out in the rain.
Tonight, when you think I'm rich, you want to make deals.
I opened the front door, letting the cool evening air wash over me.
The difference is, I don't need you anymore. I don't need anyone. Mom, please. David's voice cracked. Don't leave like this. We're family.
I turned back one last time, looking at the son I'd raised, the boy I'd loved more than my own life.
Family shows up when you need them, David. You showed me exactly what kind of family you are.
Vincent was waiting by the car, his expression carefully neutral. As we drove away, I could see David and Sarah in the doorway, their figures growing smaller in the rear-view mirror.
How do you feel? Vincent asked. I considered the question seriously. I felt empty, but not in a bad way.
Empty like a house that's been cleared out and is ready for new furniture.
Empty like a canvas waiting for paint. Free, I said finally. I feel free.
And what would you like to do with that freedom? I thought about the house by the river, about the library with its floor-to-ceiling windows. I thought about all the places I'd never traveled, all the books I'd never read, all the dreams I'd deferred for other people's happiness.
Everything, I said. I want to do everything.
3 months later, I was sitting in my library, reading a book about the gardens of Tuscany and planning my first trip to Italy, when the doorbell rang. Through the security monitor, I could see David standing on my front porch, holding a small wrapped package.
I didn't answer the door.
He rang 3 more times, then left the package on the step and walked away.
Later, when I was sure he was gone, I retrieved it.
Inside was my mother's china teacup, the one from the set I'd given Sarah for her wedding.
There was a note attached. Mom, I found this in our attic. I thought you might want it back. I'm sorry for everything. I love you, David.
I held the teacup for a long time, remembering Sunday afternoons when David was small, when we'd have tea parties with his stuffed animals and plan adventures we'd never take. Then I wrapped it carefully and put it in a box with other things from my old life, things that belonged to the woman I used to be.
The woman I was now had different plans.
The next morning, I called my travel agent and booked a first-class ticket to Rome.
It was time to start living the life I'd bought with my freedom.
And if David wanted to be part of that life, he'd have to earn his way back in. Not with money or apologies, but with the kind of love that shows up when it matters most. The kind of love I'd finally learned to give myself.